The ships came from the dark, between stars like floating cities, made of crystal and light. They were beautiful in a way that made humans stop what they were doing and stare up at the sky. News reporters called it the most important day in human history. Scientists wept with joy. Children pointed at the bright spots moving across the heavens and asked their parents if the visitors were angels. Sarah Chun pressed her face against the window of the research station and watched the alien fleet take position around Earth. As the lead scientist studying life from other worlds, she should have been excited. Instead, something cold settled in her stomach. The ships were too perfect, too clean. They moved in formations that spoke of military precision rather than peaceful exploration. Beautiful, aren't they? Dr. Martinez joined her at the window. His eyes shone with wonder. Imagine what we can learn from them. Sarah nodded, but said nothing. She had spent her life looking for signs of alien life. Now that it was here, she wished she felt happier about it. The first alien to speak to Earth called himself Ambassador Zikthron. He appeared on every screen across the planet at the same time. The creature was tall and thin, with skin that shifted between blue and silver like oil on water. His voice was warm and friendly, like a grandfather telling bedtime stories. "People of Earth," he said, "we greet you with joy and wonder. We are the Galactic Hegemony, guardians of peace across 10,000 worlds. We have watched your species grow and learn, and now you are ready to join our great family among the stars." President Williams sat in the Situation Room with her top advisors. General Hayes drummed his fingers on the table. "It sounds too good to be true," he muttered. "Maybe that's because we're not used to good news," the president replied. Outside the White House, crowds had gathered to celebrate. People sang and danced in the streets. The stock market had crashed as investors scrambled to understand what alien contact meant for human business. The ambassador explained that Earth would receive wonderful gifts. Clean energy that would end pollution forever. Medicine that could cure any disease. Technology that would make space travel as easy as taking a bus ride. All they asked in return was simple. Humans would stay in their solar system and accept the hegemony's protection. "The galaxy is dangerous," Zikthron explained to a room full of world leaders. His ship hung above the United Nations building, like a beautiful storm cloud. "There are hostile forces that destroy young civilizations. We have protected thousands of species by keeping them safe on their home worlds. Think of us as older brothers, watching over our family." Captain Marcus Torres sat in his ship 3 days away from Earth and listened to the news broadcasts with growing unease. The U's Defiance was humanity's first real starship, built to establish a colony on Kepler 442b. Now his orders had changed. Return to Earth immediately. The mission was canceled. "But sir," he told command over the radio, "we're only 6 months from the target world. The colonists are already in cryosleep." "Orders are orders, Captain," came the reply. "The aliens say it's not safe out there. We're calling all human ships back to Earth space." Torres looked at his crew. They had trained for years to build humanity's first colony beyond the solar system. Engineer Patricia Kim had designed systems to survive on an alien world. Dr. James Foster carried seeds from Earth to plant in alien soil. Navigator Lisa Santos knew every star between here and their destination. "What do you think?" Torres asked them. "I think something stinks," Kim said bluntly. "If the galaxy is so dangerous, how did these aliens travel safely to reach us? And why are they the only ones we've heard from?" Meanwhile, Sarah Chun was discovering disturbing things in the data the aliens had shared. They claimed to represent 10,000 worlds, but the historical records only mentioned species that lived on single planets. The great Kethmori Empire occupied only their ocean world. The crystal builders called the Silphic lived only on their mining planet. The warrior race, known as the Velthari, controlled only their desert home. "That's strange," she told her research team. "These are spacefaring civilizations. Some of them achieved interstellar flight thousands of years ago. Why haven't they expanded to other worlds?" Her assistant, Dr. Patel, pulled up more files. Maybe they choose not to. Perhaps they found peace in staying home. Sarah stared at the data. Every single member species of the hegemony lived on exactly one world. Not one of them had colonies or outposts. It was as if they had all decided to stop exploring at the same time. On the streets of London, Tokyo, and New York, people celebrated humanity's entry into galactic civilization. The aliens had provided a small demonstration of their technology by cleaning the pollution from Lake Erie in a single day. The water went from brown to crystal clear blue. Fish that had been extinct for decades suddenly appeared swimming in. The clean lake. "It's a miracle," breathed Environmental Secretary Adams as she watched the lake sparkle in the sunlight. "They can fix everything we've broken." But the technology came with conditions. The devices that cleaned the lake could only be operated by alien technicians. The fusion reactors that provided clean energy required fuel that only the hegemony could supply. The medical scanners that could detect any disease needed to connect to the alien network to function. "We're becoming dependent on them," Sarah warned at a closed meeting of scientists. "Every gift they give us requires their ongoing support." Director Campbell of the space program shook his head. "You're being paranoid, Chun. They're helping us solve problems we've struggled with for decades. Climate change, disease, energy shortages, they can fix it all. But at what cost?" Sarah asked. "We're giving up our independence for their gifts." 3 months after first contact, Earth's government signed the Covenant of Protection. In a ceremony broadcast across the world, President Williams and other world leaders put their names on a document that officially made Earth a protected member of the galactic hegemony. The alien ships moved closer to Earth's orbital stations. Hegemony technicians began installing their equipment on human satellites and space platforms. They said it was to better protect Earth from cosmic threats. Captain Torres watched from his ship as alien vessels surrounded the space dock where the Defiance was birthed. His crew had been ordered to shut down their faster-than-light drive and surrender their navigation computers for safety upgrades. "They're putting leashes on us," whispered Navigator Santos. "Looking at their code, these upgrades will let them track our every movement. More than that," Engineer Kim added quietly, "they can shut us down remotely if they want to." Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the research station and watched the alien ships position themselves around Earth's ORBITAL ring. The formations were perfect, disciplined, and complete. Every exit from Earth space was now covered by hegemony vessels. As she thought about the historical records she had studied. 10,000 worlds, all with spacefaring civilizations, all living on single planets under hegemony protection. None of them expanding, none of them exploring, none of them free to leave their home systems. A chill ran down her spine as she realized the truth. This wasn't protection. This was a cage. A beautiful, comfortable cage, but a cage nonetheless. On Earth below, humanity celebrated their new place in galactic civilization. Above them, invisible bars were sliding into place. The hegemony had arrived not as friends, but as jailers. And humanity had just signed the papers for their own imprisonment. 6 months after the signing, the golden promises had turned to rust. Sarah Chun sat in her lab and stared at the medical scanner that had arrived that morning. It was beautiful, made of some material that seemed to shift between metal and crystal. According to the hegemony, it could detect any disease known to the galaxy. But when she tried to examine how it worked, panels sealed themselves shut. Error messages appeared in alien text that roughly translated to unauthorized access prohibited. "It's like they gave us a car, but welded the hood shut," complained Dr. Patel, struggling with his own piece of hegemony technology. "We can use it, but we can't learn from it." Every gift from the aliens came with the same restrictions. The fusion reactors that powered half of Earth's cities could only be maintained by hegemony technicians. The atmospheric processors that were slowly healing Earth's damaged ozone layer required weekly deliveries of alien-manufactured components. The communication arrays that connected Earth to the galactic network routed every message through hegemony control centers. Sarah had requested permission to study the technology. The response from her new Velthari mentor was polite but firm. Young species often hurt themselves trying to understand advanced technology. Trust in hegemony wisdom. Use what we provide. Do not seek to improve upon perfection. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had worked for the hegemony for 3 years before she escaped to Titan Station. She was thin and nervous, constantly looking over her shoulder, as if expecting alien security forces to appear at any moment. When Captain Torres met her in the station's dimly lit storage bay, her hands shook as she passed him a datapad. "Everything they told you is a lie," she whispered. "I was part of the Historical Integration Department. I know what really happened to the member species." Torres took the datapad and scrolled through files written in a dozen different alien languages. Slowly, a horrible picture emerged. The Kef Mori had once been explorers who traveled between water worlds across 3 star systems. Now they lived only on their birth planet, their space fleet decommissioned for environmental protection. The Sylphic had built crystal cities on 17 different worlds. Now those colonies lay empty, their inhabitants relocated back to their overcrowded homeworld for cultural preservation. "The Velthari were warriors," Tanaka continued. "They had an empire that spanned 50 systems. They fought wars, built colonies, explored the unknown. Now they serve as the hegemony's police force, and most of them don't even remember they were ever free. How is that possible?" asked Engineer Kim, who had come with Torres to the meeting. "Gradual conditioning," Tanaka explained. "The hegemony doesn't conquer through force. They make you dependent on their technology, their resources, their approval. They control information, education, even entertainment. Within a generation, maybe 2, the subject species forgets they were ever independent. They become grateful prisoners." Torres felt sick. "And this is what they plan for humanity?" "Earth was supposed to be easy," Tanaka said. "You had environmental problems, resource wars, political divisions. The hegemony expected you to gratefully accept their control in exchange for solutions to your problems. But something's gone wrong." She pulled up another file showing hegemony internal communications. The messages were increasingly frustrated. Human scientists kept trying to reverse engineer alien technology. Human explorers kept asking when they could resume colonization missions. Human politicians kept demanding more independence in running their own affairs. "They're getting impatient," Tanaka warned. "I've seen these patterns before with other species. If voluntary compliance fails, they move to the next phase." Captain Torres returned to his ship with a heavy heart. The Defiance sat in Earth's orbital dock, officially undergoing safety upgrades that had stretched on for months. His crew was restless. They had signed up to explore the galaxy, not to sit in port while aliens installed monitoring equipment in their ship. "Any word on when we can resume the colony mission?" asked Navigator Santos da Torres shook his head. "The mission's been permanently canceled. All human expansion beyond the solar system is suspended indefinitely." The crew fell silent. They were explorers, pioneers, dreamers. Being told they could never leave home was like being told they could never breathe. Meanwhile, on Earth, the restrictions were becoming more obvious. Human space development programs were being shut down one by one, their resources redirected to more pressing concerns like integrating hegemony technology. The Mars colonies had been ordered to abandon their expansion plans and focus on sustainable development of their existing settlements. Sarah discovered that her research into alien biology was being carefully monitored. Files disappeared from her computers overnight. Samples she had been studying were confiscated for safety reasons. When she tried to contact colleagues on other worlds, her messages were delayed or blocked entirely. "We're being isolated," she told Dr. Martinez during a walk outside the research facility. They spoke in whispers, aware that hegemony listening devices were everywhere. "They're cutting us off from the rest of the galaxy." "Maybe that's for our own protection," Martinez replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. "When was the last time you heard from Dr. Zalek on the Sylphic homeworld? Or received a research paper from the Kethmori ocean cities?" Martinez frowned. "The communication delays." "There are no delays," Sarah said firmly. "I checked the transmission logs. Our messages are being blocked. We're not hearing from other species because they're not allowed to talk to us. Just like we're not being allowed to talk to them." The truth was spreading among Earth's population, but slowly. Hegemony control of the news media meant that dissenting voices were quietly suppressed. Scientists who asked too many questions found their funding cut. Politicians who challenged the arrangement lost support from colleagues who had been convinced to see reason. Military officers who suggested humanity should maintain independent defenses were reassigned to desk jobs. But the hegemony had underestimated human stubbornness. In secret meetings, small groups of scientists, military officers, and politicians began to share information. They called themselves the Terra Liberation Front, though they were careful never to use that name in any communication the aliens might intercept. Captain Torres received an encrypted message from Sarah Chun. "Package ready for pickup. Titan Station. Come alone." When Torres arrived at Titan, he found Sarah waiting with Dr. Tanaka and a collection of other humans who had begun to see through the hegemony's benevolent mask. Sarah handed him a data chip containing everything they had learned about the aliens' true intentions. "We need to warn the colonies," she said. "The ones beyond the solar system that the government says were voluntarily abandoned." "I don't think they were abandoned at all." Torres felt his blood run cold. "You think they're still out there?" "I think the hegemony is keeping them secret," Sarah replied. "And I think they're in danger." As if summoned by their conversation, Torres's communication system buzzed with an emergency signal. It was from New Havana, the colony on Kepler 442b that had supposedly been evacuated months ago. The message was brief and desperate. "This is New Havana Control. We are under attack by unknown ships. Repeat, we are under attack. They're demanding our surrender. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." Torres looked at his crew, then at Sarah and the other resistance members. The moment of choice had arrived. They could return to Earth, report the message to authorities who would likely suppress it, and watch as another human colony disappeared into hegemony secrecy. Or they could do what humans had always done when their family was threatened. "Prepare for departure," Torres told his crew. "Set course for Kepler 442b. "Sir," protested Navigator Santos, "we don't have authorization to leave Earth space. The hegemony will consider it a violation of the protection agreement." Torres looked out at the stars where human colonists were fighting for their lives against an enemy that wore the mask of friendship. "Then I guess it's time to violate some agreements." The Defiance slipped away from Titan Station in the dark of space, its engines running silent, its course set for a distant world where humans refused to surrender. Behind them, Earth continued its slow slide into comfortable captivity. Ahead lay the unknown, and the moment when humanity would finally show the galaxy what happened when you threatened their family. The U's Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Captain Torres immediately knew they were too late. 3. Hegemony warships hung in orbit around the planet, like predators circling wounded prey. Their crystalline hulls gleamed with weapon ports that glowed an ominous red. Below them, the human colony of New Havana was burning. "Sir," whispered Navigator Santos, "we're severely outgunned. Those are Velthari battle cruisers. Each one has enough firepower to glass a continent." Torres studied the tactical display. The Defiance was an exploration vessel, lightly armed and built for long-range missions. Against 3 military ships designed for war, they had no chance of winning a straight fight. But Torres wasn't thinking about winning. He was thinking about 300 human families trapped on the planet below. Commander Velthik of the 3rd Hegemony Fleet came a transmission from the lead alien ship. "Unknown human vessel, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. This system is under hegemony protection protocols." Torres opened a channel. "This is Captain Marcus Torres of the UE's Defiance. Those are human colonists down there. What gives you the right to attack them? These humans violated the Covenant of Protection by establishing unauthorized settlements beyond their designated territory." The alien commander replied. His voice was cold and mechanical. "They will be relocated to approved worlds for their own safety." Relocated? Engineer Kim pulled up sensor readings from the planet. "Sir, they're not relocating anyone. They're destroying the colony infrastructure. Power plants, water treatment, food production. It's all being systematically demolished." Torres felt something hot and angry rise in his chest. Through the view screen, he could see explosions blooming on the planet's surface like deadly flowers. Each flash represented homes, dreams, and lives being erased by creatures who claimed to be protectors. "Commander Velthik," Torres said into the transmitter, "I'm going down there to evacuate civilian families. Stand aside." "Negative. No unauthorized landing will be permitted. The humans will surrender and be processed according to standard protocols." Torres looked at his crew of 200 brave souls who had volunteered to explore the unknown. They stared back at him with determination in their eyes. None of them had signed up to fight a war, but they all understood what was happening below. Children were dying while their supposed protectors watched from orbit. "Commander," Torres said slowly, "I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." He paused, thinking of Earth under alien occupation, of human colonies being destroyed across the galaxy, of an entire species being caged like animals in a zoo. The anger in his chest grew until it felt like a fusion reactor about to explode. "Negative," Torres said finally. "We do not surrender. We do not relocate. We do not fall back. You want this world? Come and take it." The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then space erupted in violence. The hegemony ships opened fire with weapons that could shatter asteroids. Beams of superheated plasma streaked toward the Defiance at the speed of light. Torres threw his ship into a desperate evasive pattern, diving behind Kepler 442's largest moon as energy blasts turned nearby space rocks into glowing dust. "Return fire!" Torres shouted over the alarm sirens that the Defiance's weapons were primitive compared to hegemony technology. Kinetic cannons that fired metal slugs at high velocity. Fusion missiles with nuclear warheads. Simple, crude, and effective. But against enemies with energy shields and self-repairing hulls, they seemed pathetically inadequate. Then Engineer Kim did something the aliens never expected. Instead of targeting the enemy ships directly, she fired at the asteroid field between them and the hegemony fleet. Tons of space rock, accelerated to incredible speeds by the kinetic cannons, created a cloud of deadly debris that the alien shields couldn't deflect. Impossible, came Commander Velthic's voice over the communication channel. Projectile weapons cannot penetrate hegemony defenses. You're right, Torres replied, watching one of the enemy ships struggle to clear its sensor arrays of metal. Fragments, but we're not aiming at your defenses. The human colonists on the planet below had heard the battle raging in orbit. Mayor Patricia Reeves gathered her people in the underground shelters that had been built to protect against meteor strikes. Now they served as bunkers against alien bombardment. That's got to be Torres, said Dr. Foster, who had helped design the colony. Nobody else would be crazy enough to take on 3 hegemony warships. Can he win? Asked a mother, clutching. Her young daughter, Dr. Foster, looked at the tactical readouts showing the space battle above. 1 human ship against 3 alien cruisers. The odds were impossible. Torres doesn't need to win, he said quietly. He just needs to give us time to prepare a surprise. The colonists had been mining Kepler 442b for rare metals when the hegemony attacked. The planet was rich in uranium and other heavy elements that Earth needed for its technology. More importantly, the mining operation had stockpiled thousands of tons of industrial explosives. If we can get those charges into orbit, Dr. Foster explained to the colonists, we can turn them into improvised missiles. Above them, the Defiance was taking terrible damage. Hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The ship's faster-than-light drive was completely destroyed. But Torres and his people kept fighting with a fury that amazed and terrified their enemies. When the Defiance's missile launcher was destroyed, Engineer Kim manually loaded torpedoes and fired them through the breach in the hull. When the kinetic cannons ran out of ammunition, the crew fired everything they had, spare parts, tools, even furniture. When their main engines failed, Navigator Santos used the maneuvering thrusters to ram the ship directly into one of the enemy vessels. Commander Velthic watched in horror as the human ship, burning and broken, smashed into his escort vessel. At ramming speed, both ships exploded in a ball of fusion fire that lit up the dark side of the planet below. This is madness, he transmitted to his remaining ships. Sentient beings do not behave this way. They are supposed to surrender when faced with superior force. But the humans weren't done. From the planet's surface, improvised rockets began launching toward orbit. They were crude, simple devices cobbled together from mining equipment and industrial explosives. The hegemony's sophisticated point defense systems easily destroyed most of them, but the colonists had learned something important from watching the space battle above. They didn't need to hit the alien ships directly. They just needed to fill the space around them with enough debris and explosions to blind their sensors and disable their weapons. The remaining hegemony ships found themselves flying through a storm of metal fragments, radioactive dust, and chemical explosions. Their shields could deflect energy beams and stop projectiles, but they couldn't maintain formation while navigating through a cloud of industrial waste and mining charges. All ships withdraw, Commander Velthic ordered. We will request reinforcements and return to complete the pacification protocol. But as his ships retreated to safe distance, something unprecedented happened. Captain Torres, bleeding and burned in the ruins of his bridge, opened a communication channel that reached every human settlement in the galaxy. "This is Marcus Torres of the U.E.'s Defiance," he said, his voice steady despite his injuries. "I want every human in this galaxy to see what just happened here. 3 hegemony warships attacked a peaceful colony. They demanded surrender. We refused. The battle footage recorded by the colony's communication satellites showed everything. The unprovoked attack on New Havana. The impossible fight between 1 human ship and 3 alien cruisers. The moment when ordinary miners and farmers took on the most advanced military in the galaxy and forced them to retreat. They told us they were our protectors, Torres continued. They lied. They told us the galaxy was dangerous. They were right, but the danger comes from them. They don't want to protect us. They want to cage us. And today, we showed them what happens when you try to cage a human being. The transmission reached Earth just as Ambassador Zek Thron was meeting with world leaders to discuss enhanced security measures in response to human instability. When President Williams saw the footage of the Defiance ramming the enemy ship, she stood up from the negotiating table. "Get out," she told the alien ambassador. "Madam President," Zek Thron said smoothly, "there has clearly been a misunderstanding. The humans at Kepler 442 were in violation of galactic law. We were simply enforcing ... I said get out," Williams repeated. "All of you, off my planet. Now." Zek Thron's friendly mask finally slipped. His features twisted into something cold and predatory. "I think you misunderstand your position, Madam President. Earth is under hegemony protection. Your people signed the covenant. You cannot simply withdraw from galactic civilization." Williams looked at the alien creature who had spent months pretending to be humanity's friend. Around the world, humans were watching the battle footage and beginning to understand the truth. The gifts had been chains. The protection had been imprisonment. The friendship had been a lie. "Watch us," she said. The war had begun. The galaxy had never seen anything like what humanity unleashed in response to the attack on New Havana. On Earth, the hegemony moved quickly to restore order. Ambassador Zeke Thron, his friendly mask now permanently discarded, declared martial law. Orbital platforms around Earth were seized by hegemony forces. Human leaders who refused to cooperate were arrested and replaced with cooperative administrators. The population was informed that violent incidents like Kepler 442 would not be tolerated, but the hegemony had made a critical error. They had shown humans exactly what happened to species that trusted them. Sarah Chun stood in a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of the Geneva Research Center and watched as resistance cells formed across the planet. The footage from New Havana had spread like wildfire through underground networks. Every human on Earth had seen Captain Torres ram his burning ship into an enemy vessel rather than surrender. They had seen ordinary colonists fire mining charges at warships with weapons beyond their understanding. "The psychological impact is spreading beyond Earth," reported Dr. Tanaka. MOING alien communications from her hidden transmitter. Other subject species are requesting information about the human incident. The hegemony is trying to suppress the footage, but it's too late. The resistance began small. Scientists sabotaged the alien monitoring equipment in their laboratories. Engineers introduced subtle flaws into the hegemony technology they were forced to maintain. Dock workers accidentally damaged alien supply shipments. Each act of defiance was minor, but together they created a pattern that worried hegemony administrators. On Mars, the reaction was more direct. Colonial Governor Elena Vasquez had lost her brother in the New Havana attack. When hegemony forces arrived to ensure stability on the Red Planet, they found the space elevators booby-trapped and the fusion reactors rigged to overload. "This is Governor Vasquez of the Mars Colonial Authority," she broadcast on all frequencies. "As of today, Mars declares its independence from Earth and withdraws from all hegemony agreements. Any alien vessel approaching our orbital space will be considered hostile." The hegemony response was swift and brutal. 3 battle groups converged on Mars with orders to suppress the rebellion quickly and publicly. They found the planet's defenses had been transformed overnight. Industrial mining lasers had been converted into weapons. Cargo ships carried nuclear warheads instead of supplies. The orbital mirrors that focused sunlight for the Martian terraforming project had been turned into death rays. Commander Velthic reassigned to the Mars operation after his failure at Kepler 442, studied the tactical situation with growing unease. "These modifications should be impossible," he told his staff. "Industrial equipment cannot be weaponized this effectively." But humans had spent centuries turning peaceful tools into instruments of war. The same creativity that let them survive. Ice ages and build civilizations also let them turn a mining ship into a guided missile. The Battle of Mars lasted 3 days. Hegemony ships with advanced shields and energy weapons faced human vessels that seemed to ignore every rule of civilized warfare. When a human ship was damaged beyond repair, its crew would aim it at the nearest enemy and trigger the fusion reactor. When traditional weapons failed, humans loaded their cargo bays with radioactive waste and rammed enemy ships at maximum speed. "They fight like animals," Velthik reported to his superiors. "They show no regard for their own survival. Every ship they lose, they use as a weapon." What terrified the hegemony most was that the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Audio transmissions from human ships captured crews singing war songs as they charged into hopeless battles. Pilots laughed as they executed ramming attacks that would kill them. Soldiers whooped with joy as they triggered massive explosions. That consumed both them and their enemies. The galaxy watched in shock as the humans did something no civilized species had done in 10,000 years. They were winning, not through superior technology or brilliant strategy, but through sheer, unbreakable stubbornness. Every defeat became a victory when human crews turned their dying ships into bombs. Every loss became inspiration for more resistance. Every death became fuel for the fire that was spreading across human spacedot in the asteroid belt. Miners converted their industrial ships into a fleet of improvised warships. The Belt Federation, which had always been independent-minded, declared their own war on the hegemony. They had advantages the aliens couldn't match: knowledge of the solar system's asteroid fields, ships designed to survive in the harshest environments, and a culture that valued individual freedom above comfort or safety. Captain Elena Vasquez, promoted to admiral after the Mars victory, led the growing human fleet from the bridge of the converted cargo hauler Terra's Revenge. Her ships were ugly, cobbled together from spare parts and mining equipment. But they were fast, unpredictable, and crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. "The key," she explained to her captains, "is that they expect us to fight like them. Orderly formations, careful tactics, preservation of valuable assets. Instead, we fight like humans. Chaos, improvisation, and controlled desperation." The hegemony's carefully maintained order began to crack under the pressure of humanity's revolt. On worlds across the galaxy, subject species watched the battle footage and began to remember what they had lost. The aquatic Kethmori staged uprisings on their ocean worlds, flooding hegemony facilities with tsunamis triggered by underwater explosions. The crystalline Sylphic began sabotaging the technology they had been forced to maintain for centuries, their crystal cities ringing with sounds of rebellion. Dr. Chun, now the unofficial leader of Earth's resistance, received a secret transmission from a Velthari commander named Zakron. The proud warrior species had been enslaved so long they had forgotten their own history. But watching humans fight had awakened something deep in their racial memory. "We remember now," Zakron's message said. "We were warriors once. We had honor. We will fight with you." But it was the hegemony's response to a human atrocity that finally turned the galaxy against them. When the colony ship New Hope, carrying 5,000 civilian refugees from Earth, was destroyed by hegemony forces, humans across the solar system went completely insane with rage. Admiral Vasquez led a fleet of volunteer ships on what Earth? Command officially classified as an unauthorized mission. Unofficially, it was called the Grief Run, a suicide attack against the hegemony fortress world of Volthara Prime. Every ship in the fleet was loaded with nuclear warheads, fusion, bombs, and enough radioactive material to poison a planet. The volunteers knew it was a one-way trip. They didn't care. They had watched their families die, their worlds burn, their species face extinction. If they were going down, they would take the enemy with them. "This is Admiral Vasquez to all hegemony forces," she broadcast as her fleet approached the heavily defended world. "You want to see what humans do when you murder our children? Pay attention." The attack was militarily pointless. Velthara Prime's defenses were impregnable, its population protected by energy shields that could deflect any conventional weapon. But the humans weren't using conventional tactics. They were using their ships as guided bombs, their crews as payload delivery systems, their own lives as ammunition. When the first human ship punched through the planet's shields and detonated its cargo of nuclear warheads in the upper atmosphere, the explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. When the second ship triggered a fusion reaction in the planet's ocean, the tidal waves reached the hegemony's capital city. When the third ship crashed into the orbital command center with a cargo hold full of antimatter, the resulting explosion created a second sun that burned for 3 days. Velthara Prime survived, but barely. More importantly, every species in the galaxy had seen the footage. Humans had penetrated the most defended world in hegemony space using nothing but courage, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. The Hegemony Central Command authorized the deployment of planet-killer weapons for the first time in their 10,000-year history. If humanity wouldn't submit, they would be made an example that would keep other species in line for the next millennium. But as the massive fleet assembled for the final assault on Earth, Admiral Vasquez broadcast one last message to the galaxy. "We are humans. We don't surrender. We don't fall back. We don't give up. You can kill us, but you cannot defeat us. Because for every human you destroy, 10 more will rise up to take their place, and they'll be angry." The final battle was coming, and the hegemony was about to learn what happened when you truly threatened humanity's existence. The hegemony's final fleet arrived at Earth like the fist of an angry god. 500 ships of the line, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust. Dreadnoughts that dwarfed human cities. Planet-killer weapons that could boil oceans and turn continents to glass. The largest military force the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years, assembled for one purpose: to erase humanity from existence. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched them come. The human fleet that rose to meet them was a joke by comparison. Mining ships with welded-on armor, cargo haulers loaded with nuclear bombs, research vessels carrying crews who had never fired a shot in anger. Against the greatest armada in galactic history, Earth could muster barely 200 ships. "Sir," reported her communications officer, "we're receiving surrender demands from the enemy fleet." Vasquez almost laughed. After everything humanity had been through, after all the lies and betrayals and murdered colonies, the hegemony still thought humans might give up. "Tell them," she said calmly, "that humanity's answer remains the same as it was at Kepler 442. No surrender, no retreat, no quarter asked or given." In the hidden base in the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Sarah Chun worked frantically on humanity's final gambit. Using captured hegemony technology combined with human desperation, her team had built something the aliens never expected: a quantum disruption device that could sever the hegemony's communication network across multiple star systems. "It's never been tested," warned Dr. Tanaka, checking the weapon's unstable power readings. "The energy requirements could tear apart everything within a light-year radius." "Then we better make sure it works," Sean replied. She thought of Captain Torres dying in the wreckage of his ship at Kepler to 442, of the thousands of humans who had sacrificed themselves to buy time for this moment. This is our only chance to level the playing field. The battle began at the edge of the solar system. Hegemony forces, expecting quick victory over primitive human technology, instead found themselves fighting an enemy that defied every rule of civilized warfare. Human ships appeared from asteroid hiding places, struck with improvised weapons, then disappeared into the dark between planets. Mining charges detonated like mines throughout the battle zone. Cargo vessels packed with nuclear warheads rammed enemy ships at ramming speed, but the outcome was never in doubt. The hegemony's technological advantage was simply too great. One by one, human ships died in balls of fusion fire. The defense of Mars collapsed when 3 dreadnoughts focused their planet crackers on the orbital shipyards. The asteroid belt fell silent as mining stations were systematically destroyed. Admiral Vasquez watched her fleet die and felt something cold settle in her chest. They were losing. Despite all their courage, all their sacrifice, all their refusal to give up, they were losing. Earth hung behind them, defenseless and doomed. Then Dr. Chun activated the silence. The quantum pulse swept outward from the Kuiper belt at the speed of light, invisible but devastating. It struck the hegemony fleet like a hammer blow to the brain, severing every connection between the ships and their vast command network. For the first time in millennia, hegemony forces found themselves truly alone. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that had operated as a single coordinated unit suddenly became individual vessels with no central command. Captains who had never made an independent decision in their careers found themselves responsible for combat operations they didn't understand. Crews who had relied on constant guidance from Hegemony Central became paralyzed by uncertainty. "What's happening?" demanded Executor Ziegthron from his command ship. "Why have we lost contact with Central Command?" His communications officer struggled with controls that no longer responded. "Sir, our quantum network is completely severed. We're receiving no signals from outside the solar system." For 10,000 years, the hegemony had ruled through perfect coordination and overwhelming technological superiority. Their ships were marvels of engineering. Their weapons were devastating. Their tactics were flawless. But they had forgotten how to fight as individuals. They had forgotten how to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Humans had never forgotten those skills. Admiral Vasquez saw the change immediately. The hegemony fleet's perfect formations began to wobble. Ships that had moved like dancers in a ballet suddenly struggled to maintain position. Orders that should have been executed instantly were delayed or misunderstood. "All units, attack now," she broadcast to the surviving human ships. "They're blind and confused. Show them what chaos looks like." The human counterattack was everything. The hegemony had learned to fear about humanity. Ships that should have been scrap metal somehow kept fighting. Crews that should have been dead continued to operate weapon systems manually. Vessels that had lost life support and gravity still managed to ram. Enemy ships with their last gasps of power. Captain Lisa Santos, now commanding the rebuilt Defiance II, led a squadron of mining ships in a direct assault on Ziegthron's command. Vessel. Her ship was a patchwork of spare parts and determination, armed with kinetic cannons and a kind of desperate courage that had become humanity's signature weapon. "This is for Marcus Torres," she said as her ship punched through the enemy's shields and delivered a cargo hold full of antimatter directly to their reactor core. The explosion lit up half the solar system, but it was the liberation of the enslaved, species that truly broke the hegemony's power. As communication networks failed and command structures collapsed, the Velthari warrior Zakron led a rebellion aboard his own ship. The proud warrior race that had been serving as the hegemony's enforcers suddenly remembered what they had lost. "We were warriors." Zakron roared as he and his people seized control of their vessel. "We had honor. We will not be slaves anymore." Across the battlefield, similar uprisings erupted on hegemony ships. Kethmori crew members flooded alien vessels with engineered tidal forces. Silthic engineers caused cascading system failures in ships they had been forced to maintain. Species that had been docile for centuries suddenly remembered how to fight. The hegemony fleet, caught between human desperation and alien rebellion, began to collapse from within. Ships that had been unbeatable became helpless as their own crews turned against them. The perfect order that had maintained galactic peace for millennia dissolved into chaos and civil war. Executor Zeke Thrawn found himself face to face with Admiral Vasquez in the ruins of his command center. His ship was dying around them, torn apart by internal explosions and human weapons. The executor who had once commanded the loyalty of 1,000 worlds now stood alone in a burning bridge, facing a human who should have been dead a dozen times over. "Why?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine confusion. "Why do you fight when you cannot win? Why do you sacrifice everything for a hopeless cause?" Vasquez, bleeding from a dozen wounds, smiled at him. "Because that's what humans do. We don't surrender. We don't fall back. And we sure as hell don't let anyone else decide our future for us." She triggered the final charge that destroyed both their ships. The Battle of Earth ended not with humanity's victory, but with the hegemony's collapse. Their fleet was scattered, their command structure was broken, and their network of control had been shattered beyond repair. Across the galaxy, member species declared their independence and began the long work of rebuilding their freedom. Dr. Chon, watching from her hidden base as alien ships fled the solar system, knew that humanity had won something more valuable than a military victory. They had given the galaxy back its courage. Earth was scarred. Half its orbital infrastructure was destroyed, billions were dead, and the planet itself bore the wounds of the longest war in human history. But humanity was free, and more importantly, they had shown the rest of the galaxy that freedom was possible. The final scene showed human ships, battered but unbroken, heading out to the stars. Not as conquerors, but as liberators. They carried a simple message to every world they encountered. You don't have to kneel. You don't have to submit. Stand up, fight back. The galaxy is yours to claim. Behind them, Earth began the slow work of healing. Ahead lay a galaxy full of species learning to be free again. And in between, human ships sailed through the dark, carrying the most dangerous idea in the universe, that no one has the right to rule over anyone else without their consent. The hegemony was broken. The galaxy was free. And humanity had learned that sometimes the price of freedom was worth paying, no matter how high it climbed.